Prime Minister decides to join APAC 2023 in the United States. Death toll in Gaza surpasses 10,000. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for tuning in. You're watching World Today. I'm SAHIH. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim today decided that he will join the 2023 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APAC Economic Leaders Week in San Francisco, United States, even when there were calls for him not to attend. Datuk Seri Anwar, who is also Finance Minister, said the decision to participate in the conference was to protect the country's interests from various angles of diplomatic, security and economic relations. Realizing that the decision would not please all parties, Datuk Seri Anwar hopes that he will not be punished as being pro-Israel for attending the conference, which will be attended by all Asian member countries at the invitation of US President Joe Biden.
Bagi saya keutamaan juga menjaga hubungan diplomatik dan keamanan walaupun tidak berganjak dari sudut mempertahankan keadilan dan menyokong perjuangan hak rakyat Palestin. Kerana saya sebagai Perdana Menteri, saya nak kena jaga je kepentingan negara ini. Nak juga keselamatannya, ekonominya, kesenangannya.
The Premier was speaking at a gathering with the Ministry of Finance staff today. APAC is a regional economic forum established in 1989 to capitalize on the growing interdependence of the Asia-Pacific and the SAHIH. It will take place in San Francisco from November 11 to 17th. All 21 APAC members' economies account for nearly 40% of the global population, nearly 50% of global trade, and more than 60% of US goods exports. On another note, the Prime Minister said Malaysia does not recognise the unilateral sanctions or action taken by any countries, including the United States, for the decision to pass a bill regarding restrictions on foreign entities that support Hamas in Palestine. He said the government remained firm in its stance of supporting Hamas and does not consider them as a terrorist group.
Kerajaan tidak mengiktiraf mana-mana keputusan, mana-mana negara, termasuk Amerika Syarikat, yang mengenakan sekatan atau sanction secara unilateral. Kita hanya mengiktiraf keputusan Majlis Keselamatan Bangsa-Bangsa Bersatu yang dibuat apa yang disebut sebagai multilateral. Jadi tentunya kita pertama tidak bersetuju dengan cara dan dibuat oleh Amerika Syarikat. Keduanya, dia tidak mempengaruhi dasar dan keputusan kita.
Speaking at Dewan Rakyat, the Prime Minister said he had also called several leaders from Islamic countries and they had declared the same stance as Malaysia. The death toll in Gaza has surpassed 10,000 people after 1 month of bombardment by Israel, whose offensive against Palestinian fighters showed signs of intensifying. The Health Ministry said the dead in Gaza include more than 4,000 children. It said Israel's latest overnight barrage killed 292 people and hit 2 pediatric hospitals and Gaza's only psychiatric hospital. Meanwhile, an Israel airstrike hit a building in the Al-Shifa hospital complex, killing 1 Palestinian, but Israel denied it attacked the hospital. Gaza's health ministry spokesman said 170 patients and hundreds of displaced Palestinians were in the hospital building at that time. He said several Palestinians were wounded in the strike. Determined to destroy Hamas, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed no let-up despite mounting calls for a ceasefire. The White House said US President Joe Biden and Netanyahu discussed potential tactical pauses in a phone call Monday. But no agreements were announced and the pair did not broach the possibility of a humanitarian ceasefire, which the United Nations say is urgently needed. Ground forces with tanks have flooded the northern half of the Gaza Strip and tightened an encirclement of Gaza City, effectively splitting the territory in two. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the protection of civilians must be paramount in the conflict between Israel and Hamas, warning that the Gaza Strip was becoming a graveyard for children. The UN chief said clear violations of international humanitarian law were being committed.
Gaza is becoming a graveyard for children. Hundreds of girls and boys are reportedly being killed or injured every day. More journalists have reportedly been killed over a 4-week period than in any conflict in at least 3 decades. More United Nations aid workers have been killed than in any comparable period in the history of our organization.
He once again called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
We must act now to find a way out of this brutal, awful, agonizing dead end of destruction, to help end the pain and suffering, to help heal the broken, and to help pave the way to peace, to a 2-state solution with Israelis and Palestinians living in peace and security.
He said the UN needs $1.2 billion to help deliver aid to 2.7 million people in Gaza and the West Bank. Elsewhere, prominent 22-year-old Palestinian activist Ahmed Tamimi has been arrested by Israel army during a raid in the West Bank. Asked about the reasons for her detention, a security source cited a social media post attributed to Tamimi that calls for the massacre of Israelis. The activist's mother, Nariman al-Tamimi, denied her daughter wrote the post.
يعني إسرائيل بدهاش حدا يقولها ليش ما فيش بدها تعتقل يعني اعتقلت أبوها وهو مسافر على عمان بدون ولا إشي واليوم حكموا إداري بدون تهمة كمان يعني هي إسرائيل بدهاش تهمة عشان تعتقل حدا وبدهاش إشي عشان تعتقل حدا.
Over 1,350 people had been arrested in the West Bank since 7 October, including 850 allegedly affiliated with Hamas, with the Palestinian Prisoners Club advocacy group put the number at 2,150. The Pentagon on Monday said a United States nuclear-powered Ohio-class submarine is in the Middle East to help prevent the Israel-Hamas war from spiraling into a broader conflict. The U.S. Central Command posted a picture of the submarine the day before on social media platform X that appeared to show it transiting in Egypt's Suez Canal. Some Ohio-class submarines are armed with nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles, while others are configured to carry more than 150 Tomahawk cruise missiles. It was not specified which type is currently in the Middle East, but cruise missiles would have more immediate utility in the event of an escalation. The United States has bolstered its forces in the region in a bid to keep the conflict from spreading into a broader war, deploying 2 carrier strike groups and other assets to drive home its message that regional actors should not seek to take advantage of the unrest. U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria have faced a spike in attacks since mid-October that Washington has blamed on Iran-backed forces. Carrying out strike last month on sites in Syria, the Pentagon said were tied to Tehran. Authorities in India's smoke-ridden capital, New Delhi, extended an emergency schools closure by a week with no signs of improvement in the megacity's choking levels of pollution. New Delhi is blanketed in acrid smoke every autumn, primarily by blame on stubble burning by farmers in the neighboring agrarian states. Delhi State's Education Minister Atashi posted on X, formerly Twitter, that as pollution levels continue to remain high, primary schools in Delhi will stay closed till 10th November. Atashi added that secondary schools are being given the option of shifting to online classes. Delhi State annually imposes restrictions on construction activities and orders some vehicles off roads when pollution reaches severe levels. But critics say that governments will fully ignore the agricultural primary source of the public health crisis. The farmers in neighboring states are a powerful electoral lobby, and leaders have long resisted calls to impose strict fines and other punitive measures on them for their actions. The city is regularly ranked as one of the most polluted on the planet, with its annual smog blamed for hundreds of thousands of premature deaths each year. Libya has started deporting about 600 undocumented Egyptians migrants to their country. Mohammed Barda, Deputy for Security Affairs, said the Directorate of Combating Illegal Migration began the expulsion of Egyptian nationals who entered illegally into Libya. The migrants were being driven back to the Egyptian border on buses, crossing territory controlled by a rival administration in the east. Many Egyptians passed through Libya in attempts to reach Europe. Thousands more have lived there for years, many working in agriculture, construction and other sectors, particularly around of the capital. After the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya was divided between rival authorities based in the east and the west. Until recently, United Nations agencies were responsible for repatriating refugees and migrants in Libya. But after a recent agreement between Libya's two administrations, the DCIM, which is affiliated with the Western government's Interior Ministry, was put in charge of deportations. The North African country has also become a hub for tens of thousands of migrants seeking to reach Europe by sea every year. According to the UN International Organization for Migration, more than 700,000 migrants were present on Libyan territory between May and June of this year. Coming up next, UN expresses concerns over Myanmar infighting. The United Nations expressed concern about heavy fighting between the army and an alliance of ethnic minority groups in northern Myanmar, which has left civilian casualties and displaced more than 30,000 people. Secretary General Antonio Guterres reaffirms that civilians should be protected, also calling for an unimpeded access to humanitarian aid. Fighting intensified last week in large areas of Shan State close to the Chinese border. The Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army (MNDAA), the Tang National Liberation Army (TNLA), and the Arakan Army (AA) claim on Saturday to have seized dozens of outposts and 4 towns and blocked important trade routes to China. A few days earlier, a junta spokesman has described as propaganda claims that armed group had seized several towns in Shan State. The fighting poses a threat unseen by the army since the 2021 coup against Aung San Suu Kyi. The French Senate started to debate a hugely controversial immigration bill that the government says will bolster security for legal migrants, but which opponents see as new evidence of a lurch to the right by President Emmanuel Macron. Left-wingers reject the draft law's bid to expel more people and toughen conditions for irregular migrants, while conservatives bristle at provisions to regularize the situation of undocumented workers in sectors with labour shortages. It is the right flank that poses the biggest obstacle to Macron and his minority-centrist government passing the legislation. Conservative MPs' votes will be needed to get the bill through the lower house of Parliament, the National Assembly, while the right has a majority in the upper house, the Senate. Several attempts to bring the Republicans on board over the past year have fallen flat, and there is little sign that this time will be different. Macron on Sunday proposed broadening constitutional rules governing the type of social issues like immigrations that can be put to referendum. Intended as a bone thrown to the right, the proposal has so far had little visible effect on rhetoric around the immigration bill. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said he was satisfied with a very positive engagement with China after meeting President Xi Jinping in Beijing on Monday. Xi said on Monday that stable ties between China and Australia serve each other's interests and both should expand their cooperation, sending a clear signal that Beijing was ready to move on from recent tensions.
We have an interest in there being dialogue and in there being understanding. And one of the things that I raised, again, I went back to my Shangri-La speech that I gave, where I spoke about guardrails and military-to-military cooperation between the United States and China. That's important. I noted very much that unimpeded trade was in the interests of both countries, was good for Chinese consumers as well as Australian exporters.
For decades, China and Australia built a relationship on trade, with Beijing becoming Canberra's biggest commercial partner with purchases of Australian food and natural resources. Before ties soured after Australia in 2017 accused China of meddling in its politics. Poland's President Andrzej Duda on Monday tasked Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki with a first attempt at forming the new government. Morawiecki will get the first shot after his Nationalist Party and Justice Peace Party won last month's election on Monday, a seemingly impossible task as it lacks a majority.
Postanowiłem powierzyć misję sformowania rządu premierowi Mateuszowi Morawieckiemu. Tym samym zdecydowałem o kontynuowaniu dobrej tradycji parlamentarnej, zgodnie z którą to zwycięskie ugrupowanie jako pierwsze otrzymuje szansę utworzenia rządu.
An alliance of pro-European Union opposition parties won a majority in the October 15 ballot, but President Andrzej Duda had said before the election he would give the party with the largest number of seats the first chance to form a government. PiS, in power since 2015, led in the election but lost its majority. With all other parties having ruled out forming a coalition with it, the party looks unlikely to be able to govern. If Morawiecki is unable to win a vote of confidence in Parliament, the chamber would then appoint another Prime Minister. This will likely be former European Council President Donald Tusk, the mainstream opposition party's choice for Prime Minister. UN peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of Congo announced a joint operation with the National Army designed to stop M23 rebels from capturing key eastern cities. The announcement follows a surge in clashes with the M23 group since last month, which has forced 200,000 people from their homes, according to the UN, after a period of relative calm. It also comes after the Congolese government requested the departure of the unpopular UN peacekeeping force known as MONUSCO. A new joint military operation with the Congolese army, dubbed Springbok, will aim to protect Goma and the nearby town of Sake. A Tutsi-led group, the M23, has captured a swathe of territory in eastern DRC since launching an offensive in late 2021, displacing over 1 million people. The United States and several other Western states have concluded that Rwanda backs the M23, although Kigali denies the claim. MONUSCO is one of the world's largest and most costly UN peacekeeping missions, with an annual budget of around $1 billion. Peacekeepers have been present in DRC since 1999, but militia violence have nonetheless continued to plague the east. The current 14,000-strong peacekeeping force is deeply unpopular due to perceptions that it is ineffective. Several dozen owners of transport companies on Monday blocked 3 major Polish border crossings with Ukraine to protest what they say is unfair competition from the neighboring country's businesses. Trucks line up at the border checkpoint in Dorhus, with almost all cargo traffic blocked by protesters who blame the liberalization of European Union rules for the slump in their revenues. Clad in neon safety vests, a group of protesters led by Makler had left their trucks parked on the main road to Dorhus checkpoint, effectively blocking the route. On the vehicles, a banner detailed the protesters' demand, with reinstating entry permits for their Ukrainian rivals at the top of the list. Following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the EU waived a system of permits for Ukrainian transport companies to enter the bloc. The Polish companies claim the move has triggered an influx of Ukrainian competitors into the sector, plunging their profits. According to the truckers, the competition with Ukraine is now proving too difficult to endure. Demonstrators took to the streets of Mexico City to demand emergency aid for the reconstruction of Acapulco after Hurricane Otis struck the Mexican coastal city. The protesters left in a caravan on Sunday from Acapulco and arrived on Monday at the Mexican government palace to ask President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's administrations to speed up the release of resources to start the reconstruction of the port city. President López Obrador has unveiled a $3.4 billion Acapulco recovery plan and said the city should notice a difference by Christmas. Some experts fear a full recovery could take years. Hurricane Otis slammed into Acapulco 2 weeks ago, devastating homes, hotels and other businesses, severing communications and temporarily leaving the city of 900,000 people incommunicado. Korean pop star G-Dragon, of wildly successful but problem-plagued Big Bang, denied any wrongdoings as he appeared for police questioning on Monday over alleged drug use. South Korea has extremely tough legislation on illegal drugs, and even Koreans who take drugs like marijuana legally overseas risk prosecution upon returning to their home country. G-Dragon, whose real name is Kwang Ji-yong, arrived at the Incheon Nondeon police station in a black sedan, dressed in a dark suit and wearing black rimmed glasses. This year, President Yoon Suk-yeol called for more stringent measures to eliminate drug traffickers, saying the country was no longer drug-free. Leaving the police station after the questioning that lasted for nearly 4 hours, the artist said that he had tested negative for drugs, adding that he put in an urgent request for a more detailed test. G-Dragon is the latest in a string of South Korean entertainers to be probed for alleged drug use. His group Big Bang is one of the South Korea's most successful boy bands, having sold at least 140 million records worldwide since its debut in 2006. But its members have often been in the limelight for misconduct. Still to come in sports, Chelsea triumphs over 9-man Spurs. Poland's Iga Swiatek trashed Jessica Pegula to win the WTA Finals, sealing her return to world number 1. Second seed Swiatek dominated Pegula from start to finish to clinch a 6-1, 6-love victory in a 59-minute masterclass. The Polish star took control of Monday's contest, dominated on serve and pulled Pegula all over the court with whipped ground strokes that left her opponent flailing. Pegula also struggled on serve, being broken 5 times while coughing up 23 unforced errors compared to Swiatek's 6. Swiatek, who gave up only 1 break point opportunity in the entire match, which Pegula was unable to convert, sealed victory in the 6th game of the second set when the American pulled a backhand return long. The 17th win of Swiatek's career ensures that the 4-time major singles champion from Warsaw will finish the season as world number 1 for a second straight year. Chelsea ended 9-man Tottenham's unbeaten start to the Premier League season as Nicholas Jackson's hat-trick inspired a 4-1 win in a chaotic clash filled with VAR drama. Dejan Kulusevski had given Tottenham an early lead, but Christian Romero was dismissed for a foul that led to Cole Palmer's equaliser from the penalty spot before half-time. Referee Michael Oliver and the overworked VAR officials sent off Destiny Udogie soon after the break for his second booking. Both teams had goals disallowed by VAR, while Tottenham's misfortune also included losing England's playmaker James Maddison and Dutch defender Mickey van de Ven to first-half injuries. Chelsea finally made the most of their numerical advantage when Senegal striker Jackson netted 3 times in the closing stages to hand Tottenham their first defeat in 11 leagues games. The Genji Postoglou's team remained in second place, 1 point behind leader Manchester City, while Chelsea move up to 10th place after their first win in 3 league games. Meanwhile, another string of VAR-related controversy, Ange Postecoglou admitted he does not like the system as the Tottenham boss blasted its influence on his side's out-of-control defeat against Chelsea. Tottenham had Christian Romero and Destiny Udogie sent off and were denied 2 goals by VAR in a remarkable Premier League clash.
Look, I've said it before, I don't like it. I don't like the standing around. I don't like the whole sort of theatre around, waiting for decisions. But I know that I'm in the wilderness of that. I'm kind of on my own. That in my 26 years, I was always prepared to accept the referee's decision, good, bad or otherwise. And I've had some shockers in my career, let me tell you, and I've had some go my way as well. But I'd cop that because I just wanted the game to be played. But when we're complaining about decisions every week, this is what's going to happen. People are just going to forensically scrutinise everything to make sure that they're comfortable it's right, and even at the end of that, we're still not happy.
Colombia withdraws troops from the area where search operations were undergoing for the father of footballer Luis Diaz at the request of the National Liberation Army ELN rebels who kidnapped him, as they say they are working towards his release. Luis Manuel Diaz was abducted in the northern Colombian town of Barrancas on 28 October. Diaz's mother was also kidnapped but was rescued hours later. Colombia's anti-kidnapping police chief expressed hopes that with this withdrawal of personnel, the ELN can now make more good on their word and release Don Luis. The head of the ELN guerrilla group acknowledged the organization had made a mistake when it abducted Diaz's father and vowed to work toward his release. The 26-year-old winger came off the bench in the 83rd minute at Luton on Sunday and scored a dramatic equalizer deep into added time to earn a 1-1 draw. He lifted his shirt after his goal to show a message reading "Freedom for Papa," and after the match released an emotional statement on Instagram pleading his father's kidnappers to release him immediately. Luis Enrique feels positive about Paris SaintGermains' chances in Tuesday's Champions League clash at AC Milan despite an uncertain away record in his first few months at the helm. PSG lead Group F by 2 points and will be favourites against bottom side Milan after hammering the Italians 3-0 at the Parc des Princes a fortnight ago. But a 4-1 reverse at Newcastle United in early October and a series of close calls against League One lesser lights has highlighted how a team capable of steamrolling the opposition at home can be got at on the road. PSG's evening will be complicated by the hot reception goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma will get from a capacity crowd at one of Europe's most intimidating stadiums. Donnarumma enraged Milan supporters when he left as a free agent just over 2 years ago, and their hardcore supporters are reportedly preparing a pre-match display in honour of their public enemy number one. Milan are in something of a mess in the lead up to Tuesday's clash, with injuries piling up and one win in their last 6 matches in all competitions. They are yet to even score a goal in the group, but Polioli said on Monday that he believes that his struggling team can pull off a surprise win against Kylian Mbappe and company. That concludes this edition of World Today. In our top story, Prime Minister decides to join APAC 2023 in the United States. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm SAHIH. Thank you for watching.